The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine.
Today's episode of the podcast is sponsored by Portable Church Industries over at portablechurch.com. So I'm getting ready to plant a church again. And here's the deal. The most valuable resource you have is people. So the important thing to remember is it's worth making an investment in the people that are serving your team, your setup, your teardown, all of that. And Portable Church has actually made that a whole heck of a lot easier so that you're looking after your greatest resource, your people. Make the setup and teardown of your church easy, logical, and play a game of Tetris when you're packing up and unpacking. And trust me, that will pay out dividends to your church plant in a way you never expected before. Again, head on over to portablechurch.com. And remember, if we don't believe in it, we're not going to tell you about it. portablechurch.com.
And if they don't pay us, we're not going to tell you about it either.
Hey, I'm the worst 30-second commercial maker ever.
I know. That was actually a minute.
That's a minute. I'm surprised it doesn't clock out at like a minute 20.
It was actually like a minute 4 or something like that.
But it was from my heart.
Hey, do you remember Nana?
Nana? Oh, yeah.
Hello. I'm sorry. I'm a grandma and I dialed the number wrong, honey. I was looking for my granddaughter. I'll try the number again. Sorry. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So you remember Nana.
So sweet. That's like the nicest. Okay.
Nana called again. Nana called again.
She did not call again.
I'm sorry, Mr. Paul Mitchell. I've dialed the wrong number. I'm trying to reach a granddaughter. Bye-bye.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm now Paul Mitchell. I've always wanted to be Paul Mitchell. That dude's got money, and now I'm Paul Mitchell.
Now, is that what prompted the new style?
Oh, no.
Oh, now that people are calling you Paul Mitchell, you went in front of the... It's like when kids cut their own hair. Tell them what you did, Pete.
No, you tell them what I did because you were the one that noticed.
Well, he gets on there. I'm like, dude, you dropped weight or what? And I don't play this game well with my wife. Do you notice anything different? I would make a terrible detective. But I'm like, dude, what? And he goes, I shaved my goatee. And I'm like, holy cow, you look like Babyface Malone.
I know. So here's the deal. Just a few short years ago, I had a red goatee. It's not red anymore, man.
Then you started getting involved with church planning.
Then I just got old, like overnight. I don't know what happened, and I encourage everyone not to do it. If at all possible, don't get old. So my goatee it's pretty gray now, pretty white. I mean, the rest of my hair, in fact, I was telling my wife the other day, I go, when I don't put the gel in my hair, you can see a lot of white hair. Like, I've got a lot of white hair, but you don't see it when I got the gel in there.
Right.
So Luke's been like, I want to see you with just a mustache. And I'm like, yeah, I can be Officer Pete Mitchell with just a mustache or 70s porn star. Either way, I'm thinking win-win. Shave the goatee. What
would Justin think about that, though? I think as your pastor, he might have something to say.
I think he'd be all for it.
So when I hung out with him this week in the pizza place in Huntington Beach, your name came up.
Did you see him? No, you didn't talk to him.
I did.
Again?
No. I bumped into him.
You were gone.
For the second time in my life, someone came up to me and said, hey, you're not Peyton Jones, are you? So our other podcast listener, which is Dustin, I was with my best friend from childhood. We told him stories about how we used to play Star Wars. Poor Dustin. But I met him. He's a super cool dude, man. Like, we always joke around about how he stole my Pete. And I had to say to him, we are just teasing on that when we rubbish you, right? And he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, I probably wouldn't have said hi otherwise. He was super cool.
I didn't know you talked to him.
Yeah. I can see why you still go to his church, even though he said he wasn't that great of a preacher.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm just teasing. That's just another way to rubbish you, Dustin, for stealing my Pete. Pete never said that.
So
he actually says nice things about you. I think he's just trying to make me jealous.
Actually, I don't think I talk about him. I think you're just trying to make me look good.
Don't give Dustin another thought. I know I won't.
That line is now seared into your head. You know, when someone
3 times this week in conversation, I wanted to bust that out.
Yeah.
At least 3 times, and just wasn't appropriate.
Yeah.
Like so many things I get from you.
So last night, before I go to bed, I shave off the goatee and I leave the mustache. Here's the problem. When you're already as fair-skinned as I am, and you've got basically a white mustache, it just hides. Like, you can't see it.
Yeah.
So, and then I realized, I actually got to go see one of my clients today. I can't go in there with the mustache look. Like, I don't think really anybody outside of like Caesar can pull off the mustache, but even he's got like little curlies on the end of his to show how cool he is.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, he's older than us. You know, that dude's almost like 60 years old.
I know. And look at how good he looks.
Holy crap.
What happened to
what's
us?
The secret?
Cocaine. Cocaine.
No, I remember him saying something super funny, was his secret, but I can't repeat it. But, yeah, he...
now I'm dying to know. You can't repeat it on the podcast? Must have been good.
Yes. But, yeah, that dude... Man, I looked old when I was young. I mean, I'm a guy that just prematurely aged, you know? I don't know what's up with that. I think they said that about Spurgeon after he went through the fire. But it wasn't a fire, sorry. Somebody shouted fire at his chapel at New Park Street. And the weight of the balcony collapsed when people stampeded, and it crushed, I think, I'm probably wrong on this, but I think like 9 to 12 people, something like that, died from that, and he never recovered. They said that he aged visibly since that. And I always kind of look back on being in ministry, an assistant pastor of a megachurch at 20, and kind of interim pastor at 22, and you're 20 years old, you're not even married, and you're having to do people's marriage counseling, and when they're breaking up, hitting each other, or whatever it is, and you're like, oh man, I'm not, I want to kill myself, and you're 20 years old, Of course, with my career, my education, I was a youth pastor at first. I'm dealing with people dying, right in front of me, doing CPR on them. So from a young age, man, I did kind of have a lot of traumatic experiences. It's not like my life.
So what's my excuse? I've had pretty much a laissez-faire life. I mean, I'm like, hey, what's up?
You've been doing it right, brother.
Dude, I look old as snot. I don't know what to say. I'm like, what the heck?
For some people, it's just like, I think God balances things out too, because I think God was like, hey, Pete has red hair. Let's give him a break. He's already got red hair.
What's the break? I had to shave the goatee to look young. Where's my break?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's true. But you look young. That's the difference.
Well, when you shave
really,
it.
Seriously, you guys, Pete, you got to put a picture of yourself. Because I look at this face every week, man. So it's like, I'm looking at you going, what in the heck?
That's what I tried to tell Jamie. I'm like, I no longer need to be married to you, old woman. I can go find me a young woman now because I look like 10 years younger.
And the funny thing is, these are things that most of us would laugh with our friends about. Pete actually will say this to Jamie. And of course, she will laugh.
Well, inside she's crying.
Humor is perfectly matched to Pete's sense of humor.
Did you like that? Inside she's crying.
Well, we were laughing before because your dog walked by and I went, hey, your dog's kind of skinny. And we started talking about your dog, and I said, hey, which one, is that Ricky or Lucy?
Oh.
It's Ricky, and he goes, my kids like to remind me frequently, Lucy's dead.
Like, Lucy was my girl. Lucy was my dog. I mean, even though Jamie hated it, my dog was like 65 pounds. I'd still have her sleep on the bed. She'd snuggle up in my armpit, right? She'd be like hanging out right there. This was my dog. So when I had to put her down, man, I was devastated. And so my kids today, oh, you know, Lucy's dead, right, Dad? Thanks a lot, kid. You know, dogs don't go to heaven, right, Dad? Great. Thanks a lot, kid.
Thanks for telling me we probably won't see her again, theologically anyways. Appreciate that, kids. Which, by the way, disclaimer, that is not the position. These views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of Church Planter Magazine. I happen to believe that our pets will be in heaven because heaven's just that awesome.
I actually, I don't know if our pets will be, but
I live in hope, brother.
I've read some compelling arguments. Let me just say that. I've read some compelling arguments that I couldn't argue against theologically.
Well, and okay, so here's the deal. I literally remember hearing Wayne Grudem. This is what a theology geek I was. I went to a retreat for a week straight where Wayne Grudem talked through a systematic theology all day.
Wow.
Like, you're a theology nerd, and I was a hardcore theology nerd. And, you know, and I remember him talking about, like, okay, look, he made this argument. I don't even want to tell you guys this, but he made this argument that we cannot say with any certainty that our babies that we lose will be in heaven. And he says, for example, David says, I will go to be with him. He cannot come to be with me. But this is not conclusive. And I'm thinking, buddy, if there's a loophole, if there's any passage in there, like that passage, that seems to give the indication that we will see our lost babies, please leave that door open for people that are in grieving. And he was like, nope. Yeah, we can't draw any theological. And I'm like, dang it, man, if there's animals on the new heaven, new earth, dang it, one of them's going to be my Ricky. You know what I mean? It's like, or my Lucy. Why wouldn't it be? Oh, hey, cool, Lord, there's a pit bull here. Oh, that's neat. Kind of like my pit bull that I loved so very much. I can see, Lord, how you would put a pit bull I've never met here instead of maybe the pit bull that I loved with all my heart, like a human being and a family member. You're the Lord.
But what if,
I can see that.
What if other people there look at your pit bull and it really was your pit bull and they're thinking, snack? Huh? They're thinking, again, I had a dinner that looked just like that pit bull one time. Huh?
Once again, Pete, you have rendered me speechless with your theological profundity, much like the Sunday school teacher on The Simpsons when Bart went to Sunday school class. What if it's a robot's brain in a human body, or a human body in a robot's brain? Wait. What if you lose your arm in war? Remember that?
No, but I mean, I kind of do.
It's a great episode.
Yeah.
Sunday school teacher's going, I, and then she quits. I quit.
Hey, so you know how I tend to go on these little kicks, as you like to bring up, the Charger lasted a few months. The guns have lasted actually a little bit longer than normal.
Yes, it has, yeah.
I was flipping through Facebook yesterday, and I got stopped cold by an ad, and I just thought to myself, uh-oh, I think I might have found my new hobby.
I have been sending you these emails for like a year.
What email would that be?
You've never responded to them.
What email?
The shooter response ones?
Oh, no, not that one, no.
Oh, okay. All right,
no. I did, actually, I sent that to Justin and you, and Justin's like, hey, that's cool, are you going? I think I'm going to forward this to our security team at the church.
Oh, no.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I was like, for me, it's a Saturday, and that's usually when I watch the kids, so that's the hard thing.
I would serve the Lord, but no.
Hey, someone's got to watch the kids.
Hey, man, I'm just so weirded out by that stuff. Hey, come learn to shoot people in your church. I'm like,
hey, but here's the thing, though. when you got a church, let's say like Refuge Long Beach,
Yeah.
where a good portion of the people there are not saved,
Right.
and an active shooter comes in and starts killing them.
Which is a high possibility.
In
Refuge Long Beach,
Refuge Long Beach.
outside in the park for sure.
Yeah.
Remember that time we were going to get the gas station, and they're like, "What about the drive-bys?" I'm like, "Oh, that's no problem, man. We'll put the Sunday school down in the automotive pit." You know,
Were they
the
worried about
mechanics
drive-bys? Because in that area, that'd be stupid to worry about drive-bys.
Remember the one on 7th and
No, I know.
7th and Atlantic?
Dude, that was such a nice area in Long Beach.
No, so not the one where we.
I went to the gas station. Remember? I was like in charge of that team.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would not have worried about drive-bys there.
Really?
Oh, yeah, not at all.
Okay.
You're talking about some white people from Huntington Beach going, what about drive-bys? You needed people like me from Long Beach who were like, that ain't where the drive-bys happen.
You know where our park was? Right where we were meeting at Bixby Park, dude. There was a lot of shots.
Oh, dude, I told you. We'd be circling, looking for a parking spot. I'm like, they're doing a drug deal right by my car. My windows are down. And Jamie's like, why didn't you tell me? I'm like, dude, my windows are down. If I said, hey, look at that, they're doing a drug deal, he can turn around and shoot me.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a rough, that neighborhood. I assume that the one on down towards Atlantic was even worse.
Nah. It wasn't bad at all.
Okay. All right.
I wouldn't have worried about it at all.
Okay.
Of course, I'm also packing heat. No, so anyway, here's my new hobby I'm contemplating. I don't know how to bring it up with Jamie, though. It was get your pilot's license.
Okay, now this is one I could totally get down with.
And I was like,
I ain't jumping in no plane, Hannibal.
I was like,
I ain't jumping out of no plane.
Oh, dude, and it was
I'll
like,
make you jump.
you can get it for as little as $5,000, or you can get like, I guess they have the FAA came out with a new license called the Sport Pilot License.
Yeah.
And so supposedly it's easier, it's less, work to get it. I think you can't like fly at night or something else. And like, honestly, like I would even want to fly at night. I wouldn't want to land at night. But I'm like, ooh, dude, this might be the ticket right here.
Well, this is kind of cool because there's that saying that, you pick your friends by whether or not they have a boat. So I'm thinking, the only thing better than your friend having a boat is your friend having a plane. This means you get a plane, then Peyton starts learning to fly because Peyton doesn't have to buy a plane. I just use Pete's plane. I'll be like, hey, Pete, let's go. Let's go fly planes,
to
man.
get the sport license, you can only fly a 2-seater plane. And they were like saying this is what it costs per hour for instruction and fuel of the flight. And it was like maybe $120 an hour, $200 an hour, or something like that. I was like, dude, that is cheap. I'm like,
not for me, not for church planners, man. Church planners listening to this going, oh man, that's like my 6-month budget for recreational activities.
Yeah, well, you guys need to join the Bivo Inner Circle and learn how to make the money. That's all I got to say.
You can afford flying license. So here's the deal, though. Imagine what we could do at Exponential. We could like fly our own banners through there. We could fly over top. We could drop things down.
Could we hang midgets out the plane?
Well, you can't say midgets unless
little
they
people
are performing.
Little
that's
people?
a performer. So I suppose if there was performing, you could. But
and they could like throw ninja stars while hanging outside of the plane.
So some of you guys know this because you've listened for a long time back. But in the very beginning, we went to Exponential, and Exponential was really good to us. In the they're like, hey, boom, boom, boom. But they had a thing where they couldn't let anyone interview. So we had film cameras, everything, and they were trying to be really cool to us, saying, hey, but we couldn't be on the grounds of the conference. So it was at Rick Warren's church, and we talked to his people and said, hey, can we film in your offices? And they were cool about it. So we got like Derwin Gray and some other big names, and it was kind of cool. But what we said was what we should do is do almost like, back then they had like flash mobs. And I was like, what I want to do is do like a quick like ninja strike where we pull up. Back then Breaking Bad was the big deal, and also Walking Dead, and both had Winnebagos. So we're like, let's wrap a Winnebago with Church Planner magazine, and let's have a bunch of little people ninjas, because this was an early conversation. This is not made up. You can actually rent little people for. Is this even right to say? This is 5 years on now. Things are more sensitive than they were 5 years ago. But you can rent them for parties or for whatever. And so I was like,
don't deny them their livelihood. Promote what they can do. Come on, they need advertising.
So Brandon Brooks, who's a faithful listener, was like, hey, he goes, see, he sends me this picture of his buddy in Hollywood dressed like a ninja, little person dressed like a ninja. And he goes, Peyton, do I get the job? Hi-ya! And he's doing all this res. I still have that clip. And anyways, we're going to have a bunch of them, and they were going to be running around with foam swords, throwing Ninja Star postcards of Church Planter Magazine. It's going to be like the best advertising ever. Mm. It never happened.
Yeah,
but now with the plane, we could have them parachute out and still throw it in. Because I have the stars.
I just want to dangle them on a chain.
I have the cards.
I just want to dangle them on a chain and like have them throw Ninja Stars. Paper Ninja Stars.
You lose your license if you dangle people out of your airplane.
How do you know? How do you know?
Because you have to have a special license to dangle people in chains out of your airplane. That's a stuntman license.
That's a stuntman license.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
I love it. I love it. So I don't know, man.
Do you ever talk to your wife sometimes and partway through it you're saying, you're like, yeah, blah, 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 and you realize, I just made that up. But I was convinced I knew it. Now that I'm talking, I realize I have no clue what I'm talking about.
I can't honestly say I've done that.
Yeah, I do. Instead of sometimes, I do frequently say, I don't know. But every once in a while, I'll catch myself saying something. I'm like, I don't actually know that, but that sounded really good. And it's kind of what I think. And then I'll have to back up and say, actually, I don't know. You don't do that? I think that's a dude thing, right? Like you think you know more than what you know.
No.
Oh. I see your wife in the background. Go get her. Jamie, come here.
Yeah, she can't hear you. She can't hear you.
He says he doesn't do that. She's going to tell a different story. Get her on here.
No, she won't. I'm telling you, she won't.
She's going to be like, Pete knows everything.
Hey, your mic is rubbing up against your shirt, and it's giving us...
handsome boy right now.
Your mic is rubbing up against your shirt, and it's giving us really bad feedback.
That's the kind of music you like.
Are you done?
I think I better be done.
Okay.
So how do we get into the topic today?
And we never did tell them what to expect.
Today. But yes, I approve of your new hobby. And I would love to talk to you about your flying escapades for the many months to come.
Yeah, I would be doing regular trips to Nevada and Arizona.
Wow. That's cool. You could get a side hustle.
I know, right? I could bring in all the stuff that's illegal, like straws.
You know what's going to happen is you're going to say this.
I could be smuggling straws into California.
And you're going to end up being a missionary pilot. I mean, I know how God works in your life. That's exactly. I shouldn't have told you. I should have just let it happen because it's like God constantly tricks you into.
I'll be a missionary pilot, packing heat, and shooting at the bad guys.
I'm going to hire my friend my former business colleague who's going to jail, and then you lead him to Jesus, and then you just get involved with prison ministry. But I want to be in ministry.
I still haven't gotten involved in prison ministry. I've been trying. Yeah, but I've been denied at every turn.
Are you serious?
Well, they don't follow up with me, and
seriously like that.
I think to myself, do I really want to drive to L.A.?
That's funny.
Yeah,
you do got to leave your house to minister. That is one of the things.
And I don't like leaving my house.
How you would not, this here, hello.
Yeah, Yeah, people are shocked when I go, yeah, Peyton and I haven't actually seen each other face to face in like a year.
So true.
I mean,
hey, you bought Miguel's painting.
I did. It's right now.
You called me that night. I was so bummed. I was like, oh man, I wish I could have gotten the phone that night.
Yeah, I think this week it'll be done at the framer. I had a framer put the whole thing together, and actually the frame cost me just as much as the painting.
Dude, he was selling way too cheap. That picture was so rad.
Yeah, but that's fine. He needed the money, and I needed the painting. Because what I'd like to do with it is I'm thinking about doing a contest or some sort of maybe silent auction, raise money for the church because Refuge Long Beach needs it.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe about doing that. Because, I mean, the cool thing about Miguel's story, for those of you who haven't heard this, I mean, he's former MS-13. He literally had one of his arms hacked off with a machete. I mean,
I didn't know how he lost his arm.
Oh, yeah, I had to ask. I'm like, because he's, I'm like interviewing him, getting a story, and I'm like, okay, you got to tell me, why are you missing an arm? I mean,
I knew it was gang related. I just didn't know. I didn't realize it was hacked. I thought he maybe got it.
Yeah, here, you want to hear the craziest part? The craziest part is this. He has asylum in the United States. He cannot be shipped out of the United States because he would be killed. Yet, he is not a citizen and not a resident alien. So clearly the asylum was given before Trump was president. That's an obvious one there. But so this is the life he has to live. He can't legally work, right? Because he's not a citizen or an alien, but he also can't be kicked out of the country, and he'll be on probation the rest of his life.
Yeah, so he volunteers at the Women and Children's Shelter. Since those of you that know that
actually, I don't think he's there anymore.
Oh, he's not?
I don't think so, because when I picked it up from him, I'm like, hey, where's the store? And he goes, I'm not there anymore. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know where he's at now.
Yeah, so he was, and what he was doing at the time was he was giving all proceeds. He was painting in their back area. It was kind of like his makeshift studio, and he was giving the proceeds to them, which was cool, man. I mean, how transformed is a dude? He's painting these rad pictures of Jesus. Go to Pete's Facebook wall. We should have him do a bunch and then wrap them off.
Well, yeah, there was an absolute gorgeous one, like even better than the one that I bought, and it's still at the shelter, so I could go back and buy it from him. I don't know what they were asking for it, but it was so big. It was so big. There's no way I could get it home. Like, we would need your truck. Like, that's how big it is.
I'm in an art buying mood right now, man.
Yeah?
Yeah. Man.
Well, you are going to have a new house eventually, and
eventually
stick it up on the wall.
Can't talk about it.
No, but I mean, eventually you'll have a new wall that you need to put a painting on.
Yeah. One day my prince will come.
So anyway, guys, let's actually get into our topic. Doc, lead us in.
Great Scott! It's time for this week's topic.
Let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
What is today's topic, Mr. Jones?
Today's topic is, what flavor of apostolic are you? So, those of you that know, that are in the know, you know that we talk about apostolic as meaning like a missionary, and apostolic is a gifting, meaning that you aren't going to be a pastor. You're not necessarily an evangelist. You're not just going to teach people, give them homilies and sermons. Apostolic church planners are pioneers. They cross boundaries. They contextualize the gospel. They are missionaries. That's what Paul was. And they start things. They're kind of catalysts. So when you look at the 12 that Jesus picked, some of them stayed in Jerusalem. In fact, the majority of them did. But then you got Peter and John. And then you got Paul, who says, I was the one born out of due time. The risen Lord appeared to me. Last, he says, like one born out of due time. And of course, in the same letter, he had pointed out that you have to have seen the risen Lord to be an apostle. And he says, am I not like one of the apostles? Did I not see the risen Lord like they? He's putting himself on an equal footing. And all this, by the way, is in Church Zero. Cha-ching. And if you like Church Zero and you want some more of that, get Reaching the Unreached. Cha-ching. But anyways, all that to say, there are two types of apostolic. Maybe there's a third one. I don't know. I mean, I'm learning all the time. But what I can tell you is that there are apostolic leaders who stay and apostolic leaders who go. In other words, James ran things in Jerusalem for years and never went anywhere. And he and the other apostles, there were 12, because there's 12 tribes of Israel, ran the show in Jerusalem forever. And I have a feeling that they had a wider ministry throughout, Israel, occupied Israel. But James was clearly in Jerusalem, and he was a pillar, Paul said, when he went to Jerusalem. And then he said also Peter and John were pillars. And of course, they spread out. Peter goes to Rome. John goes to Macedonia. And so you've got these different dudes that are in three separate regions hugging the Mediterranean Sea, and they form networks. So when he says they're pillars, he was saying these guys were different, and each one of them kind of became apostolic over a region. But Paul moves around from place to place, right? We don't really get the sense that John keeps moving. We don't get the sense that Peter keeps moving. Peter moves a little bit, but you get the idea that really, they're each kind of at hubs. Ephesus was the sending hub, from Paul's third missionary journey. Rome had multiple churches, and Paul hadn't been there. That was the center of the known world. Jerusalem was the epicenter of the church itself. So you had these three kind of places where there's apostolic leadership descend. But then you also had Paul, who was the model of the apostle who went, right? So this is important to church planning, because when you're looking at planning a church, here's the model that we have right now. The model is I plant a church, I start it up, I start recruiting staff, and I stay there, right? And then eventually, when I think I'm going to plant again, it's not me planting. I'm automatically planting pregnant. I'm raising up people to plant out from my church, assuming that I will be the one staying, because after all, it's my church. It's a church I planted. That's not apostolic thinking at all. What we've done is we've taken James and John and Peter, guys who stay in one spot, we've made that the norm. Rather than taking the majority of the epistles that people mention there, the majority of the people in Acts, looking at their model, which was they went, right? So rather than planting and thinking, I stay, but I raise up planters, it's I go, but I raise up leaders who stay. It's thinking about it backwards, or maybe it's the right way to think about it. So the question today is, should I stay or should I go? And one of the problems that we have is our model has also financially bottlenecked us from being able to move on. So, for example, I would say that, when you and I have talked about this before, that for me to leave, I had to set up a payment system, a transitional wage system where maybe the first year I make $3,000 a month at that church plant, and the guy coming in makes 0 or 1. And if he has a problem with that, I go, hey, that's what I made when I started here. That's like, you wouldn't do it for that? I did. I started the church with the promise of failure, really, and did that. Maybe you're not the right guy for this, but a year in, your pay goes down $1,000 a month, his goes up. And so there's this kind of teeter system that the longer you get away from handing your church off, the less your pay goes until, meanwhile, you're planting another church. So you're taking $1,000 that first month. And then the next year you take $2,000. And so as your pay is declining in the church you left, it's increasing in the place you went. And so we needed to create a system for apostolic leaders to move on, because I would argue that most ministers don't move on because of finances. They feel in their heart like they want to go do it again. I was in a meeting, so I'm in Atlanta right now, and I got to say, I served with some really, really incredible people at North American Mission Board. And this week we locked ourselves in a room again, the second time in a month, and are revamping curriculum. And, we're basically, we're talking about all of this. And one of the points I made is, look, our system is still that you plant and stay and you raise up others. In other words, you plant pregnant. And I'm like, we have not done the serious work, and we, not meaning NAM, just everybody. NAM's having the conversation. I feel like NAM is ahead of the curve. But we have guys that they're not meant to stay, and they stay to the destruction of their own soul. It reminds me of David, who, when it says normally when the kings go out to war, David stays at home. And of course, that's when he meets Bathsheba. And I told the guys, I said, look, I'm convinced that a lot of these ministers that are super talented, super high capacity, they're guys that you'd be like, oh, I want to reproduce them. The reason they crash and burn in adulterous affairs is that in their heart, there was more of an adventure waiting to happen to them again, but we didn't show them the way. We didn't show them another path of ministry, the New Testament path. They were wired for what we didn't provide. And so they ended up falling because they sought that thrill and excitement in an illegitimate way. That legitimate adventurer spirit went towards an illicit titillation. You know, I believe that if they kept moving on, no, you aged again.
I have a few concerns with what you're sharing.
I should Pete the signal. Pete put his glasses on right then. I'm thinking deep about this, and I want to comment, but I'm just convinced that a lot of our guys, because you go, how, why, what? Because it's like that Shamu in captivity. I mentioned all this in Church Zero Cha-ching.
Yeah, but here's the thing too, and I think part of what you hit on is probably the biggest part of it. It's the financial dynamics that we've turned the church into. Being a pastor is now a job, a vocation, in some respects more than a calling. Like, we see it as, okay, I went to seminary, I got to go get that job. Okay, I got to start out as a youth pastor, and I'm going to climb my way up, and eventually I'm going to take over when that pastor retires or leaves or quits or whatever, and that'll be my church. And we've turned the whole model into a job. And I mean, in some cases, I think it's appropriate, right? I'm not like knocking the whole thing, but it has become, as you know, we've experienced this in running the Bible Winter Circle. We've experienced the pastors writing in, I think it's a shame that pastors have to be bivocational. They should all be, full-time supported by their church. And I don't have a problem with being full-time supported by your church. I have a problem with thinking that all of them should be that way. Because I don't like the freedom that you're talking about of being able to go from one place to another, to another, to another, to plant, to plant, to plant. Paul was able to do that because he had a vocation outside of ministry. Right. He had the ability to, as I would say it in today's vernacular, to create money on demand. He knew he could make tents and he could create money. So he probably had a system for gaining clients in every area he went to. I have no idea what that was back in those days. He knew how to put the things together, repair, whatever it was that he did. He had a system for gaining clients. He was
a tent maker.
Yeah.
And that, we've mentioned this before, that Priscilla and Aquila were very wealthy. They were good at it. They would be like the Pete Mitchells of...
I'm not that wealthy.
Well...
I'm just more wealthy than anybody you know, which does not mean I'm wealthy.
You're my richest friend. I have my machoest friend, my richest friend, my coolest friend.
Who's your machoest friend?
Oh, Keith Olson.
Who's that?
Another red-haired guy from Refuge Huntington. Haven't you seen him? He's like this big Scandinavian-looking dude. He's got red hair. Keith Olson.
I don't think so.
You'll see him linger around kind of like security there. He's packing.
Yeah, they got the sheepdogs there.
He was raised in Alaska. He was one of those, he was a salmon fisherman. Then he was one of those deep sea fishermen.
I thought you were going to say it was your Navy SEAL friend.
Do I have a Navy SEAL friend?
Yeah, the guy
Chad, the kid in my youth group.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you guys ever read that book, Seal of God, by Chad, I'm forgetting his name, Williams. He was a kid in my youth group. If you read his testimony, obviously I was not that effective of a youth pastor. But, Chad Williams. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, SEAL, having that as a job, maybe that's the most macho job of any guy I know. But Keith, man, I'm just telling you, he builds motorcycles from scratch in his garage. He restored a Stingray.
But you're 5 foot flat. House. Everybody is macho to you.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's kind of true, man. Short man syndrome kicks off. But, yeah, just having a friend that macho makes me feel good about myself.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So, because I'm like, dude, he's super macho, and he's my friend.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like
my whole
machismo.
My whole point in what I was saying is just it's the model that I think is where we've really screwed it up, and it's also our society, because where are you going to find a pastor today or someone who wants to get started in ministry who is thinking something different than, well, isn't this the way ministry is supposed to be? I'm supposed to go get a job at a church. Who who even thinks differently than that? And that's a problem at the core, but
it is a problem. That's where we got to go back. That's what we're kind of saying right now is we're going back and saying, and so we broke down like currently right now we're looking at things like we had a unit called fundraising. We moved it to reproducible sustainability. Just even changing the name to that, like how would I, rather than fundraising, I got to get fully funded. No, it's not about your paycheck. It's never been about your paycheck. Like you watch guys where they plant a church and then their church plant can't pay them, so they shut the thing down. And we've gone back and said, we need to make sure that never happens again. How dare you start a church, claim that this is something that God wanted in that area, and then because it can't pay you a paycheck, you feel you have the right to shut it? Come on.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't raise up another leader to, maybe there's someone else in the wings who's going, hey, you know what? Like, I'd really like to serve here. Well, and this is part of the problem is when we're talking about reproducible sustainability, if I can even say it, this is where everything that I always talk about comes into play, things we discuss, which is team leadership, bivocationalism, like all these things. What I was really hitting on with my team was multiple streams of income. You have partner churches, you have, churches that want to give towards you, you have your job you work, and then you might take a little bit from the church. Paul says that's cool. And yet Paul says, hey, I did not choose to do this. Let me just grab this little thing called the Bible here. Gosh, you know what? Sometimes we'll get through these things and we don't read the Bible. I'm sorry about that, listeners. I just now shamed myself. Because, we do have this book, the Bible. It's got some amazing things in it. Like when you listen to Paul, when he talks about, he says, yet it was kind of you to share my trouble. Okay, so this is where he talks about, I know how to abound and how to be in need. And I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Paul's saying there are times I have plenty, more than enough. There are times I don't have anything. And I've learned, that's Paul, the greatest church planner ever. And then verse 14 of Philippians 4, he says, yet it was kind of you to share my trouble. And you Philippians yourselves know that in the beginning of the gospel, when I left Macedonia, no church entered into partnership with me in giving and receiving except you only. Now, this is his second missionary journey. He says, so I just had you guys as partners. He goes on to say, even in Thessalonica, you sent me help for my needs once and again. So there's partners, right? But he's not fully funded. Not that I seek the gift, but I seek the fruit that increases to your credit. I receive full payment and more. I am well supplied. And then there's another part where Paul talks about how he worked with his own hands and did not exercise his right to receive from the gospel. And then he goes on to say, I did this as a model for you to imitate us. In other words, he's saying, guys, I didn't have to live that way, but I did because I wanted to show you this is how you get the gospel out. That's phenomenal, dude.
Yeah.
So,
and I do just think that that's the biggest hurdle is the mindset. We talk about it in business all the time. In fact, we brought it up on, might have been this last Band of Brothers call that I do for the bivocational guys. And I know
the one on Saturday that I don't come to.
Yeah. The one on Saturday that you don't go to because it's business and you don't really care about business. And also I run a group for, detailers, and we went over this in the detailer group. But in both groups, I said the biggest hurdle that everyone has to go through, it's the mindset. It's the shift that has to take place there. And, I'm going to use this guy as an example. A. David, who's a member of our Bivo Inner Circle, he's been in it at this point, maybe a year and a half. And he had one of the biggest mindset shifts that had to happen. And it took him probably the longest of anyone who sticks with it. There are plenty of guys who quit. They quit on themselves and they just quit. And I really think it's that they're 3 feet from gold, that old story, right? 3 feet from gold, and they just quit.
Right.
Because the biggest hurdle is the mindset shift that has to happen.
Right.
And for David, it took about a year for that mind shift to change. And when it did, he went from like this on the bottom, barely scraping by, barely making any money, trying to do ministry, totally frustrated, totally everything, to his life is completely different today. Completely different. And he's just like, I can't believe the freedom that I have. But it was a mindset shift that had to happen for him. And I would say that that's what has to happen in the way that we do ministry. And I don't know where it starts, because if you think about it in the seminary, they're already going to seminary with that mindset of, when I get out of here, I'm going to go get a pastorate somewhere. Right. I remember working at summer camps and talking with, because people who know me know that when I went away to college, that was like it for me. Like, going back home was not an option. So every summer I would be like, look, I got to find a summer camp somewhere that's going to hire me, because I'm not going back home. Like, I have to go someplace that can put me up, feed me, house me, and I will work for them. I would have joined the military. Literally, I would have joined the military if they would have taken me. But I got knee problems, had them my whole life. They wouldn't take me. So I remember talking with this one guy, and he goes, yeah, it's so hard to get men to work at summer camps. And I was like, what, really? Because I'm thinking, dude, I don't have to go live at home. This is like college. This is great. And he's like, yeah, because they all want to become pastors. So they all go to churches. Like, if they're ministry minded, that's what they're thinking. And I'm like, well, lucky for you, I'm not ministry minded. I just need a place to live.
Right.
But like, apparently the mindset in, seminary, college is already that of, I'm going to go be a pastor somewhere. So let me go get an internship at a church. Let me go be a youth pastor at a church, and then I'll work my way up.
It has to be modeled. So, like, for me, that's what I've been doing since 2000. Really, so in all honesty, my entire ministry, other than the longest I ever stayed at a place on staff was, 92 to 98. So 6, almost 7 years at my very first, pastoral experience. And from there, man, I didn't last anywhere more than 3 years. And I thought I was broken. Okay. So the conversation came the other day. Well, look, we don't know where you'd find an apostolic leader. Like, so for example, right now, everybody's just going in and wanting pastorates. But I suspect there were guys like me, because someone asked me in the meeting, how do you know, though? How did you, at some point, obviously you have to have planted churches before you know you're apostolic. And I said, yeah, but there were indicators way back when. And that was that I would get bored. Right when things would start going really, really well, it was time for me to go. Just something switched. And I remember thinking maybe I'm like a ministry, like, achievement junkie, like I got to do this and do that. But there is a satisfaction, like I am ready to leave now. And Paul had that, right? Wesley had that. Like, apostolic people have that. And what I said is, I suspect that we're going to find that people that are in collegiate ministries like Crew and different campus navigators, people that are doing these other kinds of ministries that aren't running churches, that those are the apostolic leaders of tomorrow. They're already doing so. No one sat them down and said, hey, you're apostolic, but they're out there doing things. And by the way, when
that actually makes a lot of sense to me. I can totally see that.
Because it is apostolic ministry they're currently in, but the church isn't providing that platform for them to actually live out apostolic calling, which is ironic.
We've talked about this before, that the apostolic minister is in a lot of ways like the entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur is different than the business owner. The business owner is like the pastor, right? He's going to stay at one place his whole life, do his thing. The entrepreneur, it's like as soon as we do one thing, we're like, okay, what's the next thing I can do? What's the next thing I can do?
Right.
And that's part of the reason why I personally like consulting, because I get to work with a client, and then when I feel like I've done everything, okay, cool, now give me another one, right? And then I get to work with another one, start over at the ground zero, and then build it back up. And that's very much that apostolic mindset that an apostolic leader would have.
Absolutely. It is. And it's interesting that Paul was both. Paul was an entrepreneur. He became an entrepreneur in the business world. I mean, he had to have some moxie, first off, to leave Tarsus at a young age and go study to become a rabbi, right? Which is what he did. He studied at the feet of Gamaliel. So he was a rabbi in training. Paul would probably have been one of the next great, we'd be talking about Rabbi Hillel, Rabbi Gamaliel, and Rabbi Saul, right? Like in history, Jesus hadn't gotten a hold of them. But the reality is, I do want to make this disclaimer. I totally agree with what you're saying. Paul was both entrepreneurial and apostolic, and there are similarities. But I do want to throw out also the disclaimer. What I'm noticing right now is a lot of guys who say, I'm entrepreneurial, assume they're apostolic. And like, you know me, I'm apostolic, but I'm not entrepreneurial. Right.
But see, I don't know that I would say that Paul was entrepreneurial either. I would say that Paul was a business owner. Like, he didn't run from business to business.
Yeah.
He had one business that he knew he could do. He probably knew, here's how I get clients. Here's how I fulfill on their desired needs. And here's how I make the money. He just packaged it in such a way that he could take it from place to place. Because here's the other key thing.
Okay. So maybe that's a difference then, because for me, it's the fact that he had to always start it up again and get new clients made me think maybe he's entrepreneurial.
I think he just had a system for it, because I think one of the things that you're hitting on that I think is really, really important, there are a lot of pastors that I can think of right now who have started side businesses in an effort to reach their community.
Yeah.
But those side businesses have I would say, taken a dominant position in their life. And now it's like the entrepreneur or the business owner whose mindset is, well, how big can I really make this business? When really, I thought it was just a tool to help you reach the community. And there's a danger there as well, right? Because now it's like, well, I fall in love with this thing that I do more than reaching the lost, which is what God called me to do.
Right.
You know, so I mean, there is definitely, there's a hard mix there. There's definitely a hard mix.
Yeah, and I've found that really fascinating with some of our Bivo guys, where they've come on and said, "Hey guys, I'm going through this weird thing because, you know, right now I'm able to do this thing, and like you said, I'm loving it, and I have money now. I didn't have money before." And they're going, and it's my mindset's changed, and they're working through it. And I remember when they brought that up, you know, like, imagine, church planner, that your problem is you're actually making money. That's where we get right now. I would say before they join Bible Inner Circle, the problem is they're not making money. Once they join Bible Inner Circle and they do what they got to do, because just joining it's not going to get you money, but doing what you got to do in it. But then the problem is I'm making money now, and this is new for me, new levels, new devils. And it's been interesting because that's where I think Paul's, I remember speaking into this, particularly when A. David shared about this, and other guys were echoing, yeah, and we've heard it before. But I remember saying, well, go back to that verse I read in Philippians, where Paul said, I've learned the secret of having abundance. And like, each one of them is its own struggle. And Paul, I'm sure Paul felt that tension because he says it like it's a problem. Like, what are you kidding? Learn the secret of having abundance. Why would I have to learn a secret about that? Because Paul knew that there were new struggles that he would have to fight against things like security. Like, imagine Paul, he doesn't stay anywhere longer than 3 months. He's in Corinth, and business is booming there. That was the commercial center of the ancient world, bigger than Rome. It was the gateway between the East and the West. And here's Paul at that city. Priscilla and Aquila are there. They buy a house. They're killing it, right? In fact, Ephesus, Rome, and Corinth, Priscilla and Aquila buy a house in each. So you see that he's probably really business partners with them anyways. And then he's training his guys up and sending them out. But Paul says, I learned the secret of being content in those situations because he had to make sacrifices. I think at times, you know, the ministry had to, because, hey, I've got to feed these mouths and what have you. And then at other times, back and forth, that's our whole Bible balance that we talk about. But at the end of the day, you can imagine Paul going, you know, I've learned the secret of being in abundance and how to handle that because the gospel still needs to go out to this area.
Yeah.
And I can't just stay here and make money.
Think about guys like
the next city,
like John Wesley, who had breweries, very, very successful. And that's how he funded ministry. But he could have been like, hey, you know what? I can make this the biggest brewery in the United States. And like,
money he made from books. And a lot of people don't realize this. Like he sold a medical book. He wrote a medical book. I mean, dude lived till like he was old. I think he was like 89 or something when he died, in really amazing health. And he would say, hey, you got to sleep on a cold floor. Like he had all this. Some of it's wacky. Some of it's true. Some of it's like, I don't know, the jury's out on that one. But he had some questionable medical advice, but it was working for him, you know. And at the end of the day, Wesley made a buttload of money off of printing.
Right. And,
you know, like we said, the brewery, and he had a few other people gave him land. And Wesley set a stipend. It didn't change from that. But again, the question, do I stay or do I go? Guys, here's the question. If there were a system, and this is something that we can help you with. I gave you a little sneak peek into my next book where I spell out the system I've devised. I'm sure there's better ways. It's just we're not talking about this stuff. We're still just running on the old wineskin, wondering why the new wine's not pouring out anymore. New wine, new wineskin. Right? New ways to hold what God wants to do. And by the way, this is going to happen in future. I mean, I've been tracking like movements of what is going on with young people right now. And there's things like, you know, churches that move where they're going to be every week. I mean, one of my closest friends in San Diego is Bo Moffitt, a guy that I trained over the last few years and still partner with. And Bo did that first few years of his church. Missional community, just met different places, grew up to about 85 people. You know, there's a huge movement right now of a church in Southern California that does that. Tons of young people are coming to us, and they'll be like, hey, this week we're going to be in this warehouse in this industrial park, and boom, we'll be there for this night. Meet us there. Then they'll send out another email a couple of weeks, so we're going to be here now. And, you know, it's a movable feast. Kirk Overstreet will call it pop-up church. And so we're seeing all these different ways of reaching people. But unless we have these conversations, I mean, at the end of the day, when I get there, I just want to do church. You know, I just want to take communion. I want to hear preaching. I want to use my spiritual gifts. I want to worship. I want to pray. I want to do all the things. I don't want 30 minutes of worship, and I don't want 30 minutes of a sermon. I want all those other things I talked about that are equally as important to me. So I'm not keen on, you know, like I want to do first century stuff. But at the end of the day, we're just stuck. So should I stay or should I go? That's a question. If you find yourself feeling restless, and you feel trapped by the church you planted because of money and finances, chances are you need to go. You just need a system that will allow you, a system and structure that will allow you to do that. And it's not too late to do that. But of course, you guys can get in touch with me if you want to know more about that. And in future, I'll probably be writing about it. If you guys don't know, I write a blog, peytonjones.ninja. You'll see it on Facebook, annoyingly popping up on your feed. But you can check that out. Cha-ching. And anyways, hey, Pete, while they're busy deciding whether or not they're going to stay or go, there's just no good way to segue into that one. What should they do about their finances?
Well, they should definitely have some backup help and someone to help them maybe with payroll, workman's comp, building their website. In fact, I would say anything that they could do to simplify church for themselves, they should do.
Ooh, Simplify Church, Pete. What if they went to simplifychurch.com? What magic things would await them?
What? Simplifychurch.com, you say? They would find all of the magic that we just talked about. A business that's there to help simplify your church at simplifychurch.com.
Yeah, all the things. All right. Well, hey, guys, thanks for joining us today for Church Planter Podcast. This has been Peyton Jones and Babyface Mitchell, reminding you, if you want to reach the ones no one's reaching, you need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing.
And if you're the guy that gave us 2 stars because you didn't like Smack Talk, no one cares what you think. No one cares what you think.
Like you don't care what we're doing with our lives at the beginning. We don't care what you're doing with your podcast time. Keep it to yourself, pal.
Church Planter Magazine.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planter Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planter Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplanterpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplantermagazine.com.